Good evening. Today is Wednesday, April 29th. Welcome to the weekly live Facebook question and answer forum hosted by the Stanislaus County Office of Emergency Services. I'm Linda Muma with Stan OES.
And I'm Amy Vickery, Public Information Officer with Stanislaus County. We will both be moderating tonight's live event, which will also be recorded and later posted to the Stan Emergency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
You won't see us on screen tonight, but you will hear our voices as we help direct your questions to our panelists.
Tonight, we've invited two representatives from Stanislaus County School Districts, including Modesto City School Superintendent Sarah Noguchi and Stanislaus County Office of Education Superintendent Scott Kuykendall, as well as Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors Chair Kristen Olson.
Let's begin tonight with Kristen Olson for an update on the number of cases here in Stanislaus County. Kristen, where do we stand tonight?
Yeah, thank you. Today on April 29th, we have 15 new positive cases of COVID-19 in our county for a total of 339 positives. We have 5,094 negative test results. 230 people have recovered, which is always the good news. But unfortunately, we did have an additional death today. So we're at a total of 11 deaths. Our condolences and our heartfelt sympathy go out to the family of that individual.
Thank you for that. And I want to begin with one of our questions that came in just in the last couple of days. We've seen an updated surge model. It was just released earlier this week, and it appears that our hospitalized cases are on the rise. Is this resulting from the outbreak in Turlock?
So we do update the surge modeling as well as the dashboard on our Stan Emergency website about once a week. And there has been a small uptick in the number of hospitalizations. And you are correct, it is because of the outbreak at the Turlock Nursing Facility, which is very unfortunate. The good news is it is a small uptick. There are not very many of those patients who have had to be hospitalized. Right now we have 27 in the hospital today throughout Stanislaus County, not just from that facility, but throughout Stanislaus County, there are a total of 27 patients in the hospital. 6 of those are in ICU, which again, those are just small upticks in our numbers. Every week, as I said, this surge modeling gets updated on the website. We have a brand new dashboard display on the website. We adopted much of what Santa Clara was reporting and how they were reporting it, and we will continue to update that on a weekly basis as we get feedback. But we're hopeful that all the new information on that new dashboard will be well received. It's displayed in a very user-friendly way.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to our superintendents. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We'll start with Superintendent Kuykendall with Stanislaus County Office of Education. Yesterday in his news briefing, Governor Newsom announced that as we continue distance learning, there are concerns about learning loss, and now leaders are considering an earlier start to the fall year, possibly in July. How will that impact plans for next school year for our districts?
So it's a great question, and I know that that's out there. That statement has gained some traction, especially in our community, and I've already received questions on that. What I would like to say is that I've been watching the governor's press conferences on a regular basis, and sometimes he will throw out what I'll call aspirational goals. The idea that our school districts here locally in Stanislaus County would be opening any sooner than they're already scheduled really isn't practical. And what I think the governor was intending to address, we have large districts in Southern California, and for example, one of our largest, San Diego. They may very well want to look at starting the school year earlier because they have the traditional start date that is after Labor Day. The overwhelming majority, if not all of our school districts here in Stanislaus County already have early to middle August as their start dates, so it really would not be feasible for them to go back and adjust calendars and transportation contracts for 1 or 2 weeks.
Thank you for that. Superintendent Noguchi, what about for Modesto City Schools?
Thank you. So currently Modesto City Schools is scheduled to open August 10th, and at this time that is still our plan. Certainly we have to ensure that we are adhering to guidelines from both the state and the county at that time. So as we plan to open August 10th, we are planning to open with multiple models. The first model being the traditional brick and mortar, kids come back to school if we're there at that point. We're also looking at a hybrid model where we would have some kids coming to school, let's say in the morning, some kids coming in the afternoon. And then lastly, we're looking to expand our independent study because we recognize that parents need options, and there's going to be some parents that are not comfortable in sending their kids to school. So we will have an independent study option as well. None of this would happen unless we work closely with our union partners, and we are currently in conversation right now, and we'll look to see what the guidelines are as we get there.
Thank you so much. This next question is for Scott, since we are talking about looking ahead towards the fall. What does the fall school year look like for other districts within Stanislaus County?
So the other districts are doing much like Dr. Noguchi just described. They're looking at different options, and it's going to be different. And I just want to make that very clear. We have 25 districts here in Stanislaus County. It will be different depending on that district and that community. However, all of our superintendents, we are meeting on a weekly basis, and we're talking through a lot of these issues and considerations as we're moving forward. I would like to talk about what it could perhaps look like. In the next week, we are going to have some of our Head Start classrooms reopen. And what this looks like is these classes for infants and toddlers primarily are going to be provided for essential workers. And as we move forward, the class sizes have been limited where you could have had up to 20 students in the classroom. It has now been reduced to 10. All of the CDC practices as prescribed for safety regarding cleaning and the safety of our students and our staff are being strictly followed. And then we also want our parents to know they may need to be a little more patient when dropping off students because there are going to be wellness checks both for our staff who are entering the facilities as well as students entering the program. So this is something that we're bringing back just next week, so early May. And this may be a litmus test as far as what schools potentially could look like as we're reopening in the future.
Thank you, Scott. We'll stay with you for a second. When the new school year starts, do you expect that teachers will be reviewing previous school year work and playing catch up, or how will districts make sure students are up to grade level standards?
I know already that districts are in the process of looking at summer programs. The priority right now, especially for summer school, is going to be on high school age. That's going to be sure that students don't fall behind, that they remain on track for graduation. So it's all about credit recovery. So that will obviously be in place, as well as some of our different bridge programs and even our kindergarten jumpstart programs. Districts are looking at, how can they still provide those? It may look different, but still, how can they provide those summer programs to avoid summer slide moving forward? I think that, at least at the elementary level, there are going to be assessments that students are given when they come back. We're going to do our best to pick students up wherever they need to be. Our teachers are great at differentiation and just teaching, and we've really been focused for many years now in Stanislaus County on really effective direct instruction. So as we come back, our students will be well provided for and well taken care of. I know that our teachers are going to do right by them.
Thank you, Scott. This next question is for Sarah. A lot of people are concerned right now about distance learning. So can you tell us how things have gone so far with Modesto City Schools since you began providing distance learning instruction earlier this month?
Certainly. I'm actually very excited at the work we've done for distance learning. We actually started distance learning on April 13th, and within that first week, we had 85% of our kids, and so 29,000 kids, 85% of the kids actually log on and connect. There's a couple different things that you have to consider when you look to build a distance learning system. First, at the very ground level, you have to make sure that kids have access to a computer and access to internet, and so with that, we had 15,000 computers that we pushed out to our elementary kids. Our high school kids well, actually secondary, 7th through 12th, already had computers, so we were very lucky there. So with that, there was a lot of training that needed to happen, especially for our elementary teachers who weren't used to any sort of distance learning. 2 weeks prior to the unveiling, which is April 13th, of distance learning, we had a massive amount of professional development, not only created, but also completed by teachers. I'll give you a few numbers. We had 16,000 views on our YouTube learning channel for Modesto City. And really what teachers were looking at there is, how do you log on to our learning management system, which is Schoology? How do you post? How do you engage with your kids? So it's literally videos of watching how to do this work. We also had 6,000 webinars that teachers took, individual. Again, how do you get on Zoom? How do you turn on the computer? How do you access internet? So there's been a lot of great work that's not only been created, but also that the teachers have begun and they've embraced as far as getting in and doing the learning. Are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. As of Monday, we had 92% of our kids online. That's really the first piece. So we're going to continue to build professional development and also opportunities for our parents, because we know our parents are partners, and many of them are flying blind right now. So we're currently in the process of building videos and webinars for our parents to be able to help us in this endeavor.
Thank you. So you said there was a lot of preparation for teaching staff. How are they doing now with modified lesson plans a couple weeks into it?
We know we've got teachers that are just now turning on the computer, and then we have teachers that could come in and put together the system that you all have here for this production. So we really have a gamut with respect to skill sets. What I can say and what I've seen is really a willingness to get out there and try and to learn. Our professional learning communities, teachers working together online to figure out how to make this happen. So you're really going to see a gamut. You could have 2 kids in your home, and one child is actively engaged with his teacher, and there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work going on. And then there's another child that has limited exposure. Not that there's nothing there, but it's limited because that teacher is learning how to then engage with this distance learning. So it really is a learning process, and I can say I appreciate the patience of both the teachers that are being pushed into this and also the parents that have to have the patience to get through this time. And I'm confident that within the next couple of weeks we'll have everyone online, and we'll have continued professional development for not only teachers, principals, but our community as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I wanted to pivot back over to Kristen. Can you clarify an earlier comment that you made about weekly updates to the dashboard and to recent modeling that was just released?
Yes, thank you for asking that clarifying question. Sometimes we can get so caught up in our own lingo and jargon because we're living this hour by hour, and we need to be really clear with the community. So there are things being updated and reported daily, and then there are things being updated weekly. Every day we are updating our actual data. So the number of positives, the number of negative test results, hospitalizations, available bed capacity, available ICU beds, all of those actual data points are updated on a daily basis. What's updated weekly is our modeling. So we're tracking 4 models, one out of Stanford, one out of Penn, there's 2 additional ones, and those models are projecting when our surge might take place. One of them, as we talked about last week, says we peaked earlier in April. Others have us later in this summer. So those are the models that we're updating on a weekly basis. And then the other thing we're updating weekly is how we report all of this data. So that's what we refer to when we say the dashboard. So the actual display, the graphs, the illustrations in the way that we're reporting data, we're making tweaks to as we get feedback to make sure that we're displaying this information in the best way possible, in the most user-friendly possible. So again, actual data gets updated daily, and then the way we report that data and the modeling gets reported weekly.
Thank you, Supervisor Olson. We'll stick with you for a second because I see another question here about modeling. The peaks still appear to be expected in June or August for the most part, apart from the one that you mentioned that suggests we peaked a couple of weeks ago. Does public health believe that the new public health order, opening a couple things up, will cause us to peak sooner?
Not necessarily peak sooner. So yes, as you just said and as I had just described, we have 4 models that show the curve in different ways. All 4 models show that we have been really successful in flattening the curve. And the goal at the outset, as we all remember, was to flatten the curve to make sure that our hospitals could handle surge if and when it comes to our community, that they would have sufficient bed capacity and staffing to handle the peak. And so all of these different models show slightly different examples, or not examples, but slightly different models of when we might surge. When we begin to slowly reopen the economy, it will be a slow, safe reopening. But during that time, we will continue to, public health will continue to monitor how that's affecting our models. So this is not a one-time shot in the dark and they're never going to change. That's why we're updating the weekly modeling so that we can reflect what's actually happening in our community. So as the reopening of the economy begins, once we get there, we do expect there may be some upticks here and there. We're not expecting any spikes, but it's important that we keep a handle on that we monitor that regularly, because as we've said, there will be rolling phases of COVID-19 probably over the next 12 to 18 months until a vaccine is developed and readily disseminated. During that time, those rolling phases, there will likely also be rolling phases of a stay-at-home order, different modifications based on what makes sense given the COVID-19 situation in Stanislaus County at that time. So yes, it could cause some different modeling, some different spikes, but we will be monitoring it on a regular basis to make sure we're on top of it and that our hospitals can manage the situation effectively.
Thank you, Kristen. This next question is for Scott. This comes from Terry. And Terry is asking, will summer school be available this summer? And we're also getting another question from Maria, and she wants to know, will summer programs, if made available, will they be virtual?
Okay, so the answer is yes and perhaps. So yes, summer school will continue. Again, the priority is going to be, especially for our high school age students, really focusing on credit recovery, making sure that they stay on track for graduation. That was going to be our priority. And then as we see it roll out district by district, is going to look a little bit different as far as what the offerings are and, quite frankly, how they're going to roll those out. So as much as districts can practice a distance learning model for summer school, and just speaking on behalf of the Stanislaus County Office of Education and our programs, really we're just going to be continuing with what we're already doing. So it's going to be our teachers, it's going to be our devices and the curriculum that we're currently using, and that will just extend into the summer. I don't want to speak on behalf of any given district, but I know that folks are looking at similar models and will be providing instruction for students for sure over the summer.
Let's go to Superintendent Noguchi. A lot of questions from parents and students about what might happen with graduation. Can you talk a little bit about the plans for high school graduation?
Absolutely. We recognize that graduation is really a milestone in a student's life and in the family unit as a whole. Kids have worked really hard to get to walk across that stage, and hearts go out to all the students that have had their proms and the senior balls and the trips and everything that it hasn't been available to them because of COVID-19. So we really feel deeply for them and recognize graduation is very important. And we've gone out there to say that it's not if, it's when. However, it's very important to recognize that we need to really adhere to safety protocols. What is the county's guidance? What is the state's guidance? Social distancing is going to be key. So until we get some input from the county and the state relative to social distancing guidelines, we're not sure when those graduations will happen. What we can say is we are working with a team of individuals at each of the schools to identify ways that we can celebrate our kids and celebrate them as seniors and others as well. So we'll be getting some information out in the next couple weeks as far as where we're going with that. And then as soon as we get information as far as the social distancing, we'll have information forthcoming.
Can you speak to seniors who weren't on track to meet graduation requirements? What will happen there?
You know, actually, this is actually a positive thing of COVID-19. If there is something positive that's coming out of this, kids have a lot of time on their hands right now. And so there are a lot of our seniors that we have provided an opportunity to go in and make up the classes that they have missed. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I know the principal out at Enoch's, Principal Moore, told me yesterday that she had 100 seniors sign up for, not 100 seniors, 100 courses being signed up for kids that are behind. So we actually might see our graduation rate increase as a result of this if kids actually get in and complete it. So we are very optimistic that we're going to be able to meet the needs of the students currently while school's going, but also in the summer, like Mr. Kuykendall added, we will have summer school for our seniors and also for elementary, but really looking at credit recovery for that.
Thank you so much. This next question, we're getting a lot of questions actually about business, but this is for Kristen Olson. The community is understandably very eager for businesses to reopen. Governor Newsom has alluded to seeing some changes in weeks. So how far out do you think that we are to beginning a phased reopening of certain businesses in our county?
Yeah, as Governor Newsom has talked about this week, both yesterday and today, he expects changes to happen within weeks, not months, to directly quote him. Today, he even suggested it would be a week or two. Right now, he is suggesting that we are going to move forward as a whole state. So as we've explained each week, right now the county does not have the authority to lift or modify our stay-at-home order in any way that would be inconsistent with the state order. We could be stricter than the state order, which we are not, but we cannot be more lenient than the state order. Governor Newsom at this time has said he is not delegating authority back to local officials to make decisions based on the data and the science in their communities, that he's retaining that level of authority with the state. And so he is looking at when we can move to what he calls stage 2. He says right now we're in stage 1, which is about expanding testing, making sure we have robust contact tracing teams in place, sufficient PPE, all of those safety protocols that we've been working on and doing quite well on here in Stanislaus County. Stage 2, he has announced, will include opening retail, manufacturing, offices, public spaces. He includes in that stage 2 schools and childcare. So maybe not quite as early, that's not going to be in the next couple of weeks, but he includes those in stage 2. And he said today that we may see that stage, moving to that stage within the next week or two. We are hopeful that that's the case. We have been actively working in Stanislaus County, the business community, the nonprofit community, the faith-based sector, to develop plans on what safe reopenings could look like within certain industries, retail included. So we will be ready and prepared when he makes those decisions. But it's important to note that we will be making those decisions along with the state, in partnership with the state, based on what the data and the science in Stanislaus County warrants. But we are hopeful we can begin to see some of those slow reopenings of the economy within the next week or two.
Thank you, Supervisor Olson. For those of you who may have just tuned in late to the broadcast, once this posts, we'll encourage you to go back and watch the video from the beginning, as your question may have already been answered. Let's stay with you for a moment, Supervisor Olson, because I want to ask you about business reopening. A lot of questions have come in from community members about that. Obviously, economic stability is one of the most anxiety-inducing impacts we hear about. So can you talk about what we're doing locally to protect our economy?
Absolutely. This is a really difficult time. Estimates that 30% or more of people in Stanislaus County are currently unemployed. We are hearing these struggles. We're hearing the frustrations from workers, from business owners, both small and large, about when are we going to be able to restart our economy, start providing for our individuals and families again. And we hear those frustrations and we share those frustrations. So specifically, as it relates to these anxieties and how we can come along and assist, if people call 211 Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., they can ask to be connected to the Business Services Branch, and there are a team of experts there ready to come alongside and assist both workers and business owners through this difficult time. They can connect them to monetary assistance at the state and federal level. This week, our microgrants from the county will be going out to all eligible businesses. There are over 300 of those businesses that will be receiving those microgrants. And they also have workforce training programs. They have resources to connect people to current job openings. So that's the best local resource right now. There's also Opportunity Stanislaus that is providing assistance to the business community. So there are various resources, but the easiest one for people to remember is to call 211 and ask for the Business Services Branch, and then they can connect them to the appropriate places.
Kristen, I want to stick with you for just a moment because you've talked about this repeatedly since we've had you come week after week about small business loans and grants. So where are the denial or approval emails for small business grants that were said to go out on Tuesday? Can you provide an update on that?
Absolutely. People should be seeing them in their email inboxes. They are going out this week. There are nearly 400 of them, as we said, so it could take some time. But I would expect people to have an answer, either a denial or an acceptance or an award of the grant by the end of this week. Staff has been really working hard in just record time to be able to process this program and get these monies into the hands of the small business owners who really need them right now to be able to bridge the gap between when they could receive larger state or federal assistance.
Let's go to Superintendent Kuykendall. We've had some parents ask questions specifically about students in special education. So I have one here from Maria asking, if students continue with remote learning, how are students in special education or students with IEPs to be accommodated?
That's a great question, and that's something that is a challenge for all of our districts right now, depending on the special education services that individual students are receiving. What we're doing right now is everything that we possibly can via distance learning, logging our hours and our interactions with teachers and families and students. We are even doing IEPs now via Zoom, and one of the things that this has really forced us to do is look at digital signatures when we're working with our families and we're talking about IEPs and moving forward. But our teachers are really bending over backwards right now, trying to meet the needs of all of our special education students. The county office now has an online resource located at the stanco.org/coronavirus. You can go there, and our special ed staff has done a tremendous job putting together numerous resources for other special education educators as well as families. So we're making the most of what we have and working with our families, and our priority obviously is still it's student safety, and it's really staying connected with our students and our families.
Thank you, Scott. This next question is for Superintendent Noguchi. This is understandably a challenging time for students and parents. What measures are you as a district taking to support students' mental health, and what about for teachers as well?
Thank you. We know that that's a really important question, and we all of us are in social distancing and in shelter in place, and it's taking a toll on our community and our kids and certainly our teachers and our whole staff. At the very beginning of this 6 weeks ago, we really looked into what could we do to support our staff and our students in really ensuring that we have social emotional connections with them. Our first line of defense is making sure that they are connecting with their teachers. Each and every day is my motto. How are we making sure that we're connecting with all of our kids? And if for some reason they're not connected, they're not getting on, then who's making the phone call home? So that's the first line of defense. We also developed a hotline, MCS information hotline, that directs kids or teachers or parents to online counseling services, and that could either be through our counselors and psychologists, but also the Center for Human Services, which is also helping with that. Additionally, we are partnering with Stanislaus Behavior Health and Recovery for referrals that are made through teachers and principals for kids that we see are at risk, and also parents as well, and our staff. And then we've developed lessons, social emotional lessons that we could go in and teachers have access to, either individual lesson with a child that we see is struggling, or a group as a whole, in talking through this crisis and how do you deal with this crisis and where do you go when you are in crisis. And most importantly, we're all in this together, and we're going to come out of it even stronger. And so just that notion and that theme that we will make it through. Lastly, there was a student at Grigori that has developed videos, very cute videos that really speak to social emotional welfare of the kids at high school, and they're also on our website, so I encourage anyone to go out there and take a look. It's on the website under school closure, resources for our students and parents.
I want to stick with you for just one more moment because we're getting a lot of questions about what the grading process is going to look like for students that are finishing out this semester.
We have gotten a lot of questions. We get that question daily, and we really have to think about how did we get to this place? How do we get to this place where we're asking even how do we deal with the grades? 5 weeks ago when this was a crisis and we were trying to figure out how we were going to shift 1,700 teachers into a distance learning model, half of which didn't have the experience with computers and online assessment. We really needed to take a look at, one, our workforce and partnering with MTA, which is Modesto's Teacher Association. A week after the closures of school, the state superintendent and CDE came out with guidelines for school districts to consider when setting policy around grading. I know with Superintendent Kuykendall, superintendents all came together and we had the discussion, what does this look like? Is consistency certainly is helpful in this situation. The guidelines that were outlined, there were two main themes in the guidelines. One is we need, whatever policies we come up with, is we need to have a lens of equity for all of our students and all of our teachers. And the second one was no harming any students, so leave kids unharmed through this crisis. So if a student has a grade of an A in the third quarter, then they can't be penalized in any way if they don't have access to the computer or don't have access to a teacher that's engaging them. So part of the policy that we came up with as far as grading was we're taking the third quarter grade, and you had the opportunity to raise that grade. If you had a D or an F or a C, you had the opportunity to raise that grade, but you can't lower the grade in any way. There are some parents that have found this to be challenging because it's not motivating the kids to get in there and do the work. However, what we've challenged the teachers and the students with is really getting in there and developing lessons and opportunities and learning experiences, while at the same time giving 700, 800 teachers the opportunity to learn how to get in and do the distance learning. So there's a long answer to that, but the bottom line is third quarter grades could increase or it would remain the same.
That's a good answer. Thank you for that. I'm going to stay with you for a moment because a lot of parents and students are wondering what's going to happen with school sports. We've had so many questions, one from Lenora yesterday and one just now from Crystal. What about school sports? Kids can't just sit still. So will there be a fall sports season?
You know, it's a great question, and we're all wanting to get out there and get out in the parks and get out on the fields and connect, and it really, safety comes first in this situation, so really it's waiting for the state to develop the guidelines and getting into stage 2, I think was what was just described just a little bit ago, and waiting for those guidelines. We want kids to get out there and exercise and compete, but we have to wait. Safety first, and we have to wait until after those guidelines are lifted.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pivot over to Supervisor Olson. This is a question that's coming in from our Facebook live feed. It's from Jamie, and we've seen this question come up quite a bit. When are things going to reopen, which you did touch upon, but specifically dining, gyms, parks, hair salons, and dog groomers?
Yes, dog groomers. I think I get asked this question 10, 20 times a day, and I know everybody is, and we understand the importance of the issue. I will tell you, I have learned more about pet grooming over the last week than I've ever known before. And so I just want to assure people we are actively working on this issue this week. We understand that Fresno County has just opened for pet grooming services. San Joaquin County has done the same. And so we are actively reviewing the situation with our public health officer, with our public health department, talking with groomers to determine how this could be done safely. And so that's all I can say on the pet groomers is we are actively having these conversations this week. I understand we're now in foxtail season, and that can have serious challenges for the care and the health health and medical care of dogs. So we are actively working on the issue. As it relates to the broader question and gyms and hair salons, et cetera, we were hopeful, and we are continuing to request, I know I am, that the governor delegate authority back to local officials to make some of these decisions, that we be trusted to make responsible decisions based on the data and science in our community. Understanding that the numbers in our community are very different from other counties across the state. We still have an active COVID-19 situation here. All the decisions we make will be guided by public health and based on safety, but we may be able to open some aspects of our economy that doesn't make sense to open in other areas of the state. For example, LA County. Unfortunately, right now, as I said earlier, Governor Newsom is sticking to his current principal stance on maintaining that authority at the state level and wanting every county across the state to move into the different stages at the same time. And so many of the businesses that you just described, including gyms and hair salons, Governor Newsom has in stage 3, which he said yesterday we are months away from, not weeks away from. So I know that is disappointing news to people. All I can say is this has been an evolving situation. People are doing the best they can to make wise, responsible decisions based on science, based on data, and based on what's safe. So we'll continue to work with our partners at the state level and try to be collaborative as it relates to asking for the authority to make decisions based on what data and science warrants, understanding that there isn't statewide data and science. It does vary from one region, one county to another, and we think it would be appropriate to make decisions based on that.
Supervisor Olson, staying with the theme of small businesses like beauty salons and things like that, do you know of any programs out there to help independent contractors, such as people in the beauty industry? And what about help for nonprofits?
Yes, so there is help for both the small businesses as well as the nonprofits. For the nonprofits, I would refer them to the City Ministry Network here in our community. They're doing a lot of really good work right now to help come alongside nonprofits, connect them to resources, financial resources that can assist, as well as other resources. And so to reach the City Ministry Network, the best way would be to call their general number, 209-803-8345, and let them know that they're a nonprofit looking for assistance to get through this COVID-19 time, and they should be able to connect them with resources. As it relates to independent contractors, including owners of beauty salons that don't have an employee, there is new assistance that came out, I think this week, maybe it was last week, but very recently. They are eligible for unemployment assistance and for other grants through EDD. So I would encourage them to call EDD. That can be a frustrating experience. They are trying to add manpower to be able to do a better job at taking those calls. They can also call 211 and ask for our business services branch, and our workforce development team can try to assist them through that process as well.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm going to shift back over to Scott. This is a question from our live Facebook feed from Jules. And Jules asked, this was an interesting question. Jules asks, how are school closures and changes going to impact student teachers who are working towards their credentials but are unable to fulfill their student teaching requirements at this time? And will there be any alternative routes so that they can begin teaching?
Okay, great question. And unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer for you, specifically being in the situation where you're a student teacher. What I would recommend you do, though, is go to your university that you're currently working with for your student teaching or with your student teaching program and ask them directly. What we're seeing is that there are a variety of waivers that are coming down specifically through executive order that are waiving some of these different stipulations and requirements for emergency teachers on long-term substitute credentials. And what we're hoping for is that there also be some type of waiver also for student teachers. We are wanting to ensure that as many teachers as possible are credentialed and qualified to come back and teach in the fall, because what we really don't want is to have any type of teacher shortage as we're moving forward. So contact your university and ask them directly what they've heard specifically from the state level and see if there are some accommodations that are being made for student teachers.
Thank you, Scott. I want to tell the audience we have a lot of people tuning in tonight to submit questions. Some of the questions coming in are very similar, so if you don't hear your name, your question may have been combined with another one. So for time and to cover as many topics as we can in the hour, please review this video again later. Let's stick with the superintendents for a moment. We had some questions come in last night from students, local students, and I think we should answer them. So I'm going to start with you, Superintendent Kuykendall. We had a question come in from a student about sixth grade camp. What can you tell the students in our community about sixth grade camp?
Well, first of all, sixth grade camp is a fantastic experience, and it is one of the programs that the county offers to our sixth graders here locally. Unfortunately, like all of our schools, it had to close this spring. And unfortunately, again, we have a summer program that has also been closed this year. So we are hoping that we can provide that sixth grade camp experience at Foothill Horizons in the fall. However, just like everything else, it all depends on the situation that we're in, and again, the safety and well-being for our students is first and foremost in all of those decisions. So nothing definitive. We are really hoping that sixth grade camp will continue this fall.
Thank you, Scott. This next question, we'll stick with you for just a moment,
Okay.
But it's probably relevant as well for Sarah. What measures will be taken to ensure that not only student safety, but also teacher and staff safety will be considered, especially looking forward to the return of school?
Right. So in that same vein, as far as, student safety and well-being, obviously that's a priority, as well as staff safety. So with any reopening of schools, I know that everybody is focused on additional cleaning, the training of our custodial staff and our maintenance staff to make sure that that's ongoing. Our teaching staff and all of our support staff are obviously aware of that, and there are going to be protocols in place because we want to ensure that our families and our students feel safe coming back to school, and that they know that we are doing everything. We're cleaning multiple times, it's wiping down all desks, it's door handles. The list is extremely extensive. So it's going to be probably a much cleaner environment than, speaking for myself, than even my own house going back to school. So we just want to reassure everybody that every protocol is going to be put in place. That includes any type of PPE that's necessary for staff or students. Whatever it is that we need to do to ensure our staff and student safety, that will be done.
Thank you, Scott. Superintendent Noguchi, a student asked us yesterday, when we go back to school, will we have to wear masks?
I'm going to really go back to what Superintendent Kuykendall said. It really is going to be up to the guidelines that are provided to us. At the front end of anything that we do is the safety and security of our staff and our students. I believe if the county and the state is recommending that we wear masks, then we wear masks. So there's so much that we don't know what the future holds, but we certainly will wait for guidelines.
I'm going to stick with you for just a moment. Marina had a question about, she says, I would like to know if students will have the option to be on campus when returning in the fall, or if they would have the option to continue distance learning, should there be a continuation of this pandemic?
And that's a great question. Right now we do have a team of 8 leaders in our district, working to develop a model for coming back, and it is going to have multi-pronged approach. We are looking at a distance learning model and continuing that distance learning model, partly for teachers that are thriving in it and students that are thriving in it and parents who want a choice. We're also looking at an independent study program for those students that want to engage in that route. And then lastly, we're looking at a hybrid model. Perhaps kids come in the morning and get instruction with math and English, and then in the afternoon they do history, social science. We don't know what all this looks like because, again, we have to really be thoughtful in working with our union partners. We need teachers to buy into the systems and to have an active voice along with CSEA, which is our support staff. So in answer to the question, I believe that those options are going to be available. And as soon as we land on this, and I anticipate 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be able to get out to the community and get some feedback and input from our parents and students as well, and ask them questions on what's going to work best for them as well.
So we'll continue the conversation with you, Sarah, because a couple of the questions that have come in just in the last few moments sort of touch on what you were just talking about. Sarah asks, will class sizes be reduced in the fall? What will the numbers be? And Brenda asked, how will classroom size be managed?
Well, we're really looking at social distance guidelines that are going to be provided. Right now, while yes, we can start school in a traditional fashion, we know that. We've been doing that forever, right? So there's not much that you have to plan for that. We have our master schedules, we have our class lists, that piece is there. However, if we're in social distance guidelines, we're going to adhere to those. If it's 15 individuals in a classroom, then it's 15 individuals in a classroom. If it's 6 feet apart, then we need to take a look at what that classroom size is. So it's really going to matter what the guidelines are from the state and the county on what that looks like. So I do anticipate we'll be in a social distance environment, but certainly would love to plan for just the regular traditional approach as well.
Thank you, Sarah. This next question is for Supervisor Olson. This question comes in from Kurt, and Kurt wants to know why we're seeing a sudden jump in COVID-19 deaths in Stanislaus County, with 11 reported now.
Yeah, a difficult question and an unfortunate one. Obviously, we've seen over the last couple of days the number of deaths in our county double or slightly over double, and this is due to the outbreak at the Turlock Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. The center is actively working hand in hand with both the county and the state to address this situation, but we have doubled our deaths because of the outbreak in that facility. We do have updated numbers. As of this evening, 97 people at that facility have tested positive. 67 of those 97 are residents, and 30 of those 97 are staff. It's important. We've been getting a lot of questions about why our county-wide numbers that we report daily aren't having that same number of uptick. And it's because several of these people could live out of county. And so until we can determine their residence, where their address is, we cannot report them in our number of positives because each county is responsible for reporting positives only for residences within that county. So if there are residents at that facility, temporary residents who actually's permanent residence is in another county, that other county would report that as a positive. So that's why we won't see 97 new positives necessarily in our new updates, but that is the total at that facility, 97 positives, 167 negatives, and 8 tests are still pending. But we have had 6 deaths at the facility, not at the facility necessarily, but connected with the facility, and that's why we've seen an uptick, unfortunately. The good news is we have a handle on the situation. The facility is managing it well with the state and the county at this time. We have active contact tracing in place to make sure that we're in touch with anybody who may have been exposed. There are no visitors allowed at that facility, and the situation is contained in order to prevent further spread outside of the facility.
Thank you, Kristen. A couple of our Facebook viewers and even an Instagram follower asked this week why we aren't identifying the ages of the deceased and requested that we begin offering death age ranges. Can you weigh in on that?
Yes, we will see this type of data reflected in our next update of the dashboard. So earlier this evening when we said we're doing weekly updates to the dashboard, some of that includes new data points that we can report out on. And so our public health officer said once we reach 10 deaths that she'll be able to break those down into different categories. So I would expect age groups and gender groups perhaps being 2 of those data points that we'll probably be starting to report on early next week.
Thank you, Kristen. This next question is for Scott. We've heard from a number of parents who are struggling to balance homework and also helping their students with their schoolwork. And so Delia is asking if you can share a little bit about Love Your Schools program for students and parents and how that works.
Okay. So before I start with Love Our Schools, just let me, I'm right there with you. I have 3 sons at home currently in our public schools, so my wife and I are we're attempting to make sure that they're doing everything that they're supposed to do. I would recommend to parents, if you haven't done this already, get a schedule, put a schedule together, and try to, as closely as possible, follow that schedule so that there are set times where your student can be working on schoolwork, and then, of course, all parents want their kids to do chores. Make sure that's a big thing. And just try to have some sense of routine throughout your day. I think that will help ultimately with students completing coursework, keeping in contact with their teachers. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, back to Love Our Schools. Love Our Schools was really generated by a group of volunteers that wanted to come together and do something amidst all of the chaos that the school closures created. And they really want to be a resource for parents. So loveourschools.com, that's where you can find it, went out and asked for teacher volunteers. And these are not just anybody who wants to. These are vetted teachers with an active teaching credential who can support parents who are attempting to homeschool perhaps for the very first time. So you've got somebody experienced who can help you out. And there are some criteria in place because, again, safety is key. So parents who are participating in this need to be with their child while they're being tutored. So you've got a credentialed teacher and the parent is there with the child. We've had over 50 teachers volunteer, and there are spots available. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, please reach out and contact Love Our Schools. It's been a fantastic example, quite frankly, of what the people in Stanislaus County can do when we are coming together and we have a focus and a goal and we want to do the best for our students and families.
A lot of concern from parents about how to make sure that kids stay healthy through the fall flu season. We've heard a lot about the second surge and that sort of thing. So this next question, and I'll stay with you, Supervisor Kuykendall, is why can't the schools be out for winter vacation every year? Because the kids are always sick during the winter and in school during flu season.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that has actually been thrown around as a possibility. Again, these are all just considerations that people have right now as far as could you adjust the school calendar much like when we had year-round schools. There used to be a track where students would have 2.5 up to 3 months off during the winter. Could you, in this time of pandemic, create a calendar where you have the majority of your time, what used to be your summer break, actually now during the winter break, so that there is less loss of learning, let's just say. So I don't know how feasible that is, but quite frankly, as we're moving forward, I mean, it seems like all of the possibilities are being considered. I don't know that anybody is actually going to do that. And again, with this pandemic, there's just so many unknowns. We don't know when the peak is going to be. We don't know if there are going to be spikes. We're just really trying to do the best we can with the information that we have.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to go back to Sarah. And we're getting a couple of questions from our live Facebook feed in regards to class sizes when students do ultimately return to school. And Sarah and Brenda want to know, how will classroom size be managed, and will class sizes be reduced in the fall? What will the numbers look like?
We don't know. We don't know what the future looks like relative to guidelines that are going to be set for social distancing. So we're just going to go back to the guidelines that are set for us and for the community as a whole. We'll work within those guidelines. I do anticipate, and we are planning for, smaller class sizes and opportunities for parents to continue distance learning and independent study at their home. So, the guidelines is what we're waiting on.
Thank you so much. So this one from Leticia was a pretty good question, we thought. With everything that's going on, who is looking ahead to figure out how future graduating classes can be prepared for emergencies like COVID-19?
That's a great question. We're all learning a lot on, what to do in time of pandemic. This is the first time we've been through a pandemic. It's the first time anyone in this world has been through a pandemic. And as a result, there will be a lot of work that comes out of it, a lot of good work. We're learning a lot of great lessons. And part of those lessons are going to be, what can we have in the queue so next time we don't have to be so reactive? So I don't have the answer specifically for that question, but what I do know is that we are, as a team, a management team at Cabinet, doing multiple after-action reviews. How did we respond to that? Did we respond to it in a fashion that was effective? What could we do differently? We just did that for our actions from 5 weeks ago when we worked to close schools. So we'll do the same thing with graduations. Graduations are huge, and so how we go about this work, we too will look back and look to see what we could do in the future that makes it smoother for our parents and our families and our community as a whole.
I'm going to go back to Scott because we are getting a lot of questions about schools.
Okay.
This one comes up quite a bit. Will students get to keep Chromebooks and other devices over the summer?
Okay, so that's going to be district specific. Okay, so I can speak to what we're doing at the county office. So we are going to actually have a student drop off of Chromebooks towards the end of the year. Students will come back, much like students are picking up meals. They're going to do a drive-by. They're going to drop them off. We're going to clean all of the Chromebooks, and then we're going to then reissue them for summer school. Now, that's what we're doing, so there may be other districts that have a different plan.
Superintendent Noguchi, what about for Modesto City Schools?
And I agree with Scott. Every district's going to do something different. And even in our two districts, because Modesto Cities is actually two districts, the elementary kids are going to keep their Chromebooks with the exception of sixth graders, because sixth graders are going to go into seventh grade and they have a different platform there. Our high school, we're pulling those computers back, partly because seniors are going to be gone. But secondly, the insurance piece on those computers are limited to this time frame, so we need to pull them back, do the work to ensure that they can be redistributed back. It's not an easy job to pull back 15,000 computers, so we really thought deeply about this question. Now, kids that in junior high and high school that are continuing summer school, they'll be able to continue to keep their computer. So it's a little bit of both for Modesto Cities.
Thank you so much. I want to go back to Kristen. Now that we're at least a week and a half or so into testing in Stanislaus County with the new drive-through testing site that recently opened up, how are things going there? And will any additional testing options be coming online in our county?
So I'll start with the good news. We have an exciting announcement that next week we are able to expand testing in Stanislaus County with the opening of 2 new sites in partnership with the state of California. So one will be at the Keys Community Center. The other one will be at the Patterson Senior Center. And then again, we'll still have the Verily drive-through testing in the parking lot of the Salida Library. So those 3 locations spread throughout the county will all be open early next week. And the testing is going well. Oh, the other good news about this testing is we're able to lower the criteria of who can be tested. Right now, the only people who can get an appointment to be tested are those with very severe symptoms. This new criteria allows any adult with symptoms in order to be tested at one of those 3 locations. They will still have to sign up for an appointment time, and so once we have all those details, we'll certainly get those messages out on how people can sign up for an appointment in either Keys or Patterson. The way to sign up for an appointment at the Salida Library will remain the same. They go to projectbaseline.com, fill out the form, and they'll be assigned an appointment time. It's been going fairly well, very smoothly. The one unfortunate thing we've seen is we've had about a 10 to 15% no-show rate at Verily testing. And so we can accommodate more people right now at the Salida Library location for drive-through testing. And so we're encouraging people who get an appointment, keep your appointment, get your test, because we want to make sure we can test as many Stanislaus County residents as possible. But we are looking forward to being able to triple the access to the testing in our community next week, which is a key component to being able to safely begin to reopen our local economy.
Thank you, Supervisor Olson. We'll stay with you for just a moment because this next question is about testing. Obviously, one of the important things we do every week is rumor control and trying to clarify things that are spinning out there in the community. There have been a lot of questions and comments from people wondering if someone dies in our county and happens to be tested for COVID-19 and they test positive, do they count as a COVID-19 death even if the actual cause of death is something else?
Yes, they do. So the public health guidelines do require the local public health officer, the public health department, to report all deaths as COVID-19 related if that individual tested positive for COVID. So even if their cause of death was something else, if they had been tested positive for COVID, it will be included in our total.
Thank you very much, Kristen. I think we have time for just one more question. And so this question is for Scott. What, if any, bright spots have come out of this pandemic?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to know that there are bright spots that have come out of this pandemic. Superintendent Noguchi and I and all of the superintendents here in Stanislaus County probably have never been more coordinated, probably have never communicated amongst one another more than we're currently doing now. We used to meet once a month. Now we're meeting on a weekly basis and really trying to share best practices moving forward because, again, this is unknown for all of us. I mentioned loveourschools.com. That was created out of a willingness and a want to better serve our students and families here in Stanislaus County. And I really haven't seen better coordination with county office, with school districts, with the county proper, with our local libraries, doing book giveaways. Everybody is just really all hands on deck right now. Everybody is working extremely hard, and everybody wants to do just all that they can to be a support and a comfort moving forward in this pandemic.
Thank you so much for that. A great note to end on. And with that said, we want to thank all of our panelists for being here tonight and answering questions directly from our community regarding COVID-19 in our local schools.
We also want to thank you at home for sending in your questions. If we didn't get to your question tonight, we'll continue to answer them both online in the comments and in our daily updates throughout the week.
In addition to this Facebook page, you can also find us on YouTube under Stanislaus County Office of Emergency Services, as well as on our website at stanemergency.com and on Instagram and Twitter. Just search for the keyword Stan Emergency.
So thanks again, and we'll see you next Wednesday evening for another Facebook Live Q&A at 5:30. Stay safe and stay informed, everyone.
Good night.